Back with a new video. Let's get started. Ernestine Jane Geraldine Russell was born at the summer home of her maternal grandparents in Bemidji, Minnesota. She was the first of 5 children and the only girl born to Roy William Russell and Geraldine Jacoby. Russell was always called by her second name. Her mother had chosen it because she thought Jane Russell would look good on a marquee. Russell's family moved to California when she was young. Russell took piano lessons as a child and developed an interest in acting that led her to attend 2 drama schools after she graduated from Venoys High School in 1939. Jane soon became an office manager for the Jergens Soap Company, and Geraldine Russell, a former actress who later taught elocution. After that, she found work modeling and was given screen tests at some of the movie studios. In the summer of 1940, at the age of 19, she was cast in a starring role in The Outlaw, a western about Billy the Kid being made by the eccentric aviator, inventor, business executive, and filmmaker billionaire Howard Hughes, who was well known for his love of beautiful young women. So it's no surprise that he immediately focused on Jane Russell. Hughes was impressed with her physical assets, signed her to a 7-year film deal in 1940. Director Howard Hawks began work on The Outlaw but soon fell out with Hughes, who took over the direction of the film himself as the shooting schedule extended over 9 months. Meanwhile, a publicity campaign emphasizing provocative photographs of the buxom Russell made her a star long before the movie appeared. Hughes revealed his interest in Russell's curves as the movie's selling point by designing a seamless bra for her to wear during filming. She didn't use it, but the camera still caught plenty of her cleavage. Hughes spent 2 years arguing with the Hays Office Hollywood censors before he managed to get a limited release for The Outlaw in San Francisco in February 1943. Mainly because of Russell's provocative attire, the film faced censorship issues. Hollywood Production Code Administration objected to the amount of skin that was shown, particularly by Russell. Hughes, who had directed the film, had to think fast, so he came up with a devious plan. Hughes had cut some more salacious footage from the film, but the whole ordeal had scared off the film's distributor, and if it didn't get released, he'd lose millions. That kept the film out of general release for several years. After a brief initial release in 1943, the movie was shelved until 1946. Even then, it did not get much distribution, appearing again in 1947 and 1950. When it could get into theaters, however, it was popular, eventually ranking as the 3rd most successful film released in 1943. On April 24, 1943, Russell married her high school sweetheart, Robert Waterfield, who was at the time a student at UCLA and the quarterback of the college football team. He went on to a successful professional football career with the Los Angeles Rams as a player and a coach. Russell continued in the odd position of being a movie star whose one movie had barely been seen until 1945, when Hughes loaned her out to United Artists to star in the drama Young Widow, which opened in 1946. As part of this deal, United Artists sponsored the second release of The Outlaw, and Russell accompanied showings of the film in Chicago, Atlantic City, and Boston, singing in public for the first time. Her singing was well received, and she accepted an offer from bandleader Kay Kyser to perform on his radio program Kay Kyser's College of Musical Knowledge on NBC, replacing his regular female singer Ginny Sims, who had left the band to go solo. Kyser also sent Russell to a vocal coach who was sufficiently impressed with the results to sign her for 12 weeks of appearances and, on January 8, 1947, to use her on a recording session that produced the single As Long as I Live, released by Columbia Records, her recording debut. After a second session resulted in another single, Boyne N&G Columbia signed Russell to a solo contract, and in July she recorded 8 Torch songs for her 4-disc, 78 RPM debut album, Let's Put Out the Lights, The Paleface, which went on to become the 3rd biggest box office hit of the year, demonstrated her talent for comedy and for singing, as she got to join Hope on Buttons and Bows, which won the Academy Award for Best Song. After finishing work on the film, she made her nightclub debut at the Latin Quarter in Miami Beach, but her engagement was canceled after a misunderstanding with the club owner, who objected to her impromptu appearance in street clothes at a local beauty contest. She would return to nightclub work later. Meanwhile, she went into production on her first RKO feature, a western called Montana Belle. Unfortunately, the film was shelved and did not turn up in theaters until the fall of 1952. A similar fate befell the fifth film she shot, Double Dynamite, in which she co-starred with Frank Sinatra and Groucho Marx. Made in the winter of 1948 to 1949, it didn't open until the fall of 1951. This fact notwithstanding, Columbia promptly and prematurely released a single of Kisses and Tears, a song from the picture, after Sinatra and Russell recorded a studio version of it in February 1950. No stranger to having her work left in the can after so many years with Hughes, Russell simply went on to her next film project, a crime drama with Robert Mitchum called His Kind of Woman. In November 1950, she did a recording session for London Records that included the two songs to be featured in the film, 5 Little Miles from San Bernardino and You'll Know. Now back to the film. While making His Kind of Woman, Mitchum came up with a cheeky nickname for Russell, calling her Hard John for her rigid Christian beliefs. Any other star might have taken offense, but Russell had a great sense of humor. After His Kind of Woman was completed, the cast looked forward to moving on to the next film project, but there was a dark twist around the corner. The persnickety Hughes demanded an entire year's worth of reshoots for the film, with the cast now annoyed and fighting each other, even throwing an anniversary party for the shoots. While working on the film, von Sternberg sniped that Russell was a beautiful, stupid girl. There were fights on set, and the director constantly threatened to fire his actors, but in the end, it was von Sternberg who got fired himself. Then, after all that, the film ended up as a financial flop. It was yet another setback for Russell, but her patience would soon pay off. If Russell thought her ordeal was over after finally wrapping His Kind of Woman, she was sorely mistaken. Her next project was The Macaw, which was produced by Hughes, and this time she had to deal with temperamental Austrian director Joseph von Sternberg, who quickly made enemies of most of the cast but who had a special dislike for Russell. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes was just around the corner and cemented Russell's status as Hollywood royalty. In fact, Russell even got paid more than her co-star Marilyn Monroe. But despite this competition, Monroe spoke fondly of Russell in the final interview she gave before her tragic passing, saying that Russell was quite wonderful to me. It was Howard Hawks, who had known Russell since his abortive start on The Outlaw, who cast Russell as Dorothy opposite Marilyn Monroe in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes 1953. He made sure both parts were equal, she said. He had been so wonderful when I was still wet behind the ears, so I knew it would be great the two stars became good friends. We got along great together. Marilyn was very shy and very sweet and far more intelligent than people give her credit for, said Russell. The film was a great success and Russell won praise for her performance, which perfectly complemented Monroe's. But it was Russell's last good film for some time. After her disastrous and lengthy contract with Howard Hughes through RKO Pictures, Russell was finally able to strike out on her own. Instead of signing with another studio, Russell and her husband Bob Waterfield began Russfield Productions. When Russell was just 18 years old, she became pregnant with Waterfield's child. Faced with a difficult choice at a young age, she ultimately chose to terminate the pregnancy. The procedure was difficult, and after experiencing severe complications, Russell went to see her family doctor for a checkup. His reaction was devastating. According to Russell, when the doctor took a look at her that day, he asked her a terrifying question: "What butcher did this to you?" As it turned out, the botched procedure had left the young girl infertile. The movie, the sixth she had shot but only the fourth to be released, appeared during the summer of 1951. She was disappointed when she was told by a doctor that she could not have a baby. She blamed her earlier abortion. She and her husband adopted a newborn baby girl on June 1951. They adopted a boy 4 months later, and in 1956 added another son. One of the boys was adopted while she was in the UK for a royal film performance, and the difficulty she experienced prompted her to found the World Adoption International Agency. One British politician was so outraged that he called for baby Thomas's return to the UK. Hannah McDermott, meanwhile, was charged with breaking adoption laws, and people angrily protested outside Russell's home. Although Russell hired a lawyer for McDermott and got her free and clear, the damage was already done. Russell had immediately connected to the young boy for a heartbreaking reason. He reminded her of her younger brother Billy, who had passed away at just 16 months old. While Tommy went on to live happily ever after in Hollywood with Russell, things weren't so easy for his birth mother. She perished young at just 53, and the circumstances are chilling. She left a pub with a man, and the next day her remains were found at her burned-out home. It was likely that the fire was set to cover her homicide, which remains unsolved. Russell's troubling experience with adoption turned her into an advocate, and in 1955 she founded an organization meant to facilitate foreign adoptions for U.S. families, which at the time weren't yet common. She called it the World Adopting International Fund. Despite the uproar in the UK, Russell's career made a quick recovery stateside. Russell counted the 1957 film The Fuzzy Pink Nightgown among her best work, but it was a flop. Sadly, the failure of The Fuzzy Pink Nightgown went far beyond disappointing ticket sales. It also spelled the end of the production company that Russell began with her husband Bob Waterfield. For most of the next decade, she only occasionally appeared in films and mostly stuck to television and music. Chalking it up to her advanced age, she was in her mid-30s. After spending a quarter of a century together and adopting 3 kids, high school sweethearts Russell and Bob Waterfield seemed solid as a rock, but heartbreak was lurking in the shadows. In 1967, Russell filed for divorce only for Waterfield to file a countersuit, saying that his soon-to-be ex drank too much and was prone to habitual intemperance. The terms of their custody agreement were far from conventional for that era, while the eldest 2 children, Tracy and Thomas, went to live with Russell. Custody of the youngest of their adopted brood, Robert John, was given to Waterfield. Just 2 short months after her divorce, Russell hastily married actor Roger Barrett. The timing revealed the dark side of her previous marriage. It turns out that both spouses had cheated on the other. In the end, Waterfield's affair with his secretary drove Russell to file for divorce. Just 3 months after Russell's wedding to her second husband, tragedy struck. Russell and Barrett were only married for 3 months when Barrett suffered a sudden, fatal heart attack. After 25 years and 3 months of love and loss, Russell was unexpectedly alone for the first time since high school. 6 years after the loss of her second husband, she fell for an estate agent named John Calvin Peoples. The couple wedded in 1974, and unlike Russell's other walks down the aisle, this one was built to last. Russell and Peoples remained together until his passing in 1999. Russell never remarried after him. Shortly after the passing of her third husband, Russell revealed a dark and surprising secret. She admitted that she had a drinking problem and entered rehab, all at the age of 79 years old. While Russell's youngest son didn't come to live with her after the end of her first marriage, she moved close to him and his family in the final years of her life. In 2006, her eyesight began to deteriorate. Then, a few years later, after suffering from a respiratory illness, tragedy struck. Russell's sensational life ended in February 2011. She was 89 years old. Russell was a beautiful actress and singer who knew how to play her role in the industry, and although she became famous because of her amazing figure, she knew how to play her card. She also believed Marilyn Monroe was drugged, which I forgot to mention. She left an amazing legacy behind. Anyway, if you made it this far, don't forget to subscribe.
I looked everywhere, and they're not in the camera shop either, because I went in and asked.
Then he's got them in his pockets.
He must have. Darn it.
Of course, he wouldn't bother to hide them as long as he thinks we're buying his act. Well, there's only one thing to do. Listen, order dinner for 3 in our cabin and get some drinks. I'll have him there in about 10 minutes. If we can't empty his pockets between us, we're not worthy of the name woman.
I'll have everything ready.